What was the most terrifying moment of your life? I have seen missile falling into our panel. I'm from Ukraine panel's apartment block, mostly 9 floors. Getting the phone call from my wife saying I need to get to the local children's hospital ASAP. A simple checkup at my 16-month-old son's pediatrician turned into one hell of a fight against cancer. There is a lot of uncertainty coming from all directions. Not knowing what will happen, hoping for the best and preparing for the worst can take a toll on a parent. The kid won that battle and is now 13. My call was from the fire captain to get to the hospital. Said goodbye to my 5.5-year little girl the next day. The night my teen brother was killed in a car crash, not understanding as a 7-year-old yet feeling panic as our family was never the same. My boyfriend, now fiancé, was sick for a week. He tested negative for COVID at the urgent care. 3 days later, so sick he can't move or eat. He wakes me up in the middle of the night mumbling that his chest hurts and he needs me to take him to the ER. Finally, I check him in. He's somewhat responsive to the nurses. They put me in the waiting room 2 hours later. They put me in the family consulting room. They told me he had a heart attack, died, was resuscitated, and was put on a ventilator for COVID. He was 25 years old. They told me to prepare for the worst because most people don't come off the ventilator after COVID. That was almost exactly a year ago. He was in 2 different hospitals for the next 2 months. He recovered and we just bought our first house. Ada, the DRS at the first hospital later told us he had a 1% chance of survival. Almost no one came off the ventilator after having COVID. Honestly, losing my 2-yo in an IKEA. It was right in an intersection with access to shortcuts, so perfect place for them to be anywhere. First 5 minutes went quick. Next 5 were anxious. The 5 after that were pretty rough. The next 10 were the longest of my life. Found a little tyke at one of the kiddie play stations they have. Happy as Larry and none the wiser. A moment they'll never remember will be seared into my brain for as long as it functions. When my husband and I had a huge argument after he confessed to cheating. He took off in our car and I had no idea where he went. He was gone for hours. I called the police. Eventually the police arrived at the door telling me he was dead. I couldn't fathom it. I went upstairs and took a shower to try and make my brain function. I didn't sleep for 2 days. One night changed my perception of him, cheating. I never thought that he would do that. And I also lost him completely all at once. No closure. Rocked my whole world. Helping do CPR on my best friend on New Year's 2020. Hearing fireworks while trying to save him. It's PTSD-inducing every time I hear fireworks now. Man, I really miss my friend Jason. R.I.P. Hearing my dad's panicked voice on the phone. Your mom had an accident. We're at X hospital. Come immediately. And hanging up. Gas explosion. Mom was severely burned. Thankfully her girlfriends were picking her up to go to a restaurant, and arrived there just a few minutes after the explosion, and saw smoke coming out of the house and heard my mom screaming. My mom's okay right now. Week or 2 after my 18th birthday I went to the hospital for a checkup. Told them that something is wrong with my leg. They check it out and feel an abnormality. Take me in to get an x-ray, then an ultrasound. They find a tumor the size of a tennis ball attached to my femur. I wait a few weeks and go to get it removed. During the surgery doctors noticed a weird abnormality with my heartbeat and then my heart completely stops. I woke up in a hospital bed with my heart beating at 257 BPM. They had triggered a heart attack, giving me the wrong medication. I wake up a few hours later sore as crap on some hardcore painkillers and chilled out. I have to take medication for the rest of my life now, but at least still I got a cool-ass scar and no more tumor. A lot of heavy stories. I'm going to post one that isn't quite so serious. First year of college I was borderline with my Chemistry 101 class. Long story short, I was on academic probation and needed to pass this class. I needed to be on the final to get a C in the class. The grades were going to be available the same day. The professor posted the results. I saw my grade 13. 13 out of 100. I got a fucking 13. I hit the couch in my dorm room, and I had to face the reality that I failed a class on academic probation and was done. I washed out of college. I had a mental breakdown. I had no fucking clue what the hell I was going to do. I was going to have to go back home with my abusive family and deal with the failure. An hour later, I got an email that the professor had graded the exams wrong, and the corrected grades were posted. I got a 92. The moment when I realized that I had left my kid in the bath sling, with the water running, I just went to grab my phone when it rang, but the person on the other end had a quick question I had to look up the answer to about my schedule. Then I just got distracted. I will never forget the feeling of horror when I realized what I'd done. She was perfectly fine. Water was just at her feet and legs, but that fear stayed with me and caused a few nightmares. Best friend falling through the ice on a frozen river. I grabbed him last second while holding onto a tree root. Luckily, I was able to pull him out before he was lost forever. Just sensed something was going to happen like that. Really glad I was ready. Not the most terrifying moment, but the one when I felt most terrified. You'll get the difference in a moment. Few months ago I was talking to my father in the kitchen. He was cleaning. I then finished, walked away, and as I was entering my room I hear a huge commotion, followed by a sound of glass shattering, followed by a loud kerwah. I rush back to the kitchen, and I see my dad standing in the middle of the kitchen, and everywhere there is blood and shattered glass. He has blood on his shirt and beard. There is blood in the sink on the floor, the fridge. I mean it. Everywhere. It took me approximately 0.001 s to jump in front of him, and two things hit me. He's looking more pissed than anything else. He's not shouting or screaming in pain. And there is really too much blood. Like it's surreal. I've seen people bleeding hard and nothing ever came close. There was like 3 seconds between him swearing and when I saw him, and literally liters of blood. So, what happened? He was making a beetroot leavening. A fucking beetroot leavening. It was standing in a 5-liter jar on the table for days at that point. Turns out when I left, he picked it up to give it a stir and the damn jar broke. He sweared as he was understandably pissed, and as we're Polish lol. But to me it looked like he was shot with a shotgun at point-blank range. In fact, he wasn't even scratched, but for a second, which felt like forever, I thought he's becoming a past tense. Went swimming with a group of people while I was a little too drunk. Forgot I was underwater after diving in. I was a young college-aged idiot. Lesson: don't drink and swim. Even if you are with friends. After being carjacked, but prior to being raped, my assailant put his sweatshirt over my head, and at that point I realized I was about to get shot. Thankfully, I was not, but the realization that I probably wasn't going to survive the day was terrifying. When I was a teen, I attempted to take my own life. Luckily, I survived, but there were few moments when I thought I was going to die, and all I could think of was how much I wanted to live. Knowing that it might be my last moments scared the shit out of me. My family was with me in the aftermath of the incident, and I went to therapy and got better. It was honestly the worst and the most terrifying moment of my life till date. In February, my daughter was extremely ill with anorexia and became suicidal. One night I needed to call the crisis team after it became obvious she was in a very bad way. While they were here, I had a feeling she was going to do a runner, and she did. In a previous suicide attempt, she'd run in front of oncoming traffic. She did the same that night. I heard her doing it and heard a car skidding. Then silence. 10 minutes later I heard sirens. For 45 minutes I didn't know if she was dead or alive. I eventually got a call from the police telling me she'd been sectioned and was safe and unharmed. But for that 45 minutes my entire world crashed. I really thought she'd died. I still can't bring myself to talk about this to anyone. It was horrific. Being a first-time dad, thinking I lost my daughter in a Target, my head whipping around me looking all over, then realizing she never came with me. Have you seen the video of the mom holding her baby and realizing baby's not in the cradle? The instant panic, intense relief, followed by a palpable sense of oh my god, I really just did that, lol. This is going to be me with kids. I was in downtown Honolulu during the 2018 ballistic missile false alarm. Absolute panic in the streets. I ended up spending 20 minutes hiding in a parking garage thinking I was going to die. The day my fiancé was murdered. He, 23M, called me 22F then 28 now. Early in the morning after I'd gotten off work and I told him I loved him, and I went back to sleep. When I woke up I tried to call him and his phone went to voicemail. I didn't know until I got a news link that he was dead. driving through northwestern New Mexico heading west on I-40 in January about 12 years ago. I was in my Camry with my wife in the passenger seat and our 2-year-old son in the back. Suddenly we were hit by a massive snowstorm. Traffic ground to a halt and we were stuck bumper to bumper on a steep, completely iced over incline. In front of us was a massive semi-truck. As we were stuck, ice and snow continued to fall. Then all of a sudden, the semi started to slide backward toward us. The 10 feet between the truck and my car slowly kept shrinking, and the truck driver kept trying to inch forward. But every attempt or inch gained, the truck slipped closer. I tried to inch back, but when I did, I started to slide, so I remained planted on the brake when I hit a solid patch of road, or else I'd hit the car behind me. On our right was a rock face. On my left was a large steep drop to the divided eastbound traffic below. This game of chicken went on for hours, and I had to devise a possible escape route, and I planned and practiced in my head over and over, quickly reversing, then doing a rapid 3-point turn and sliding down the snowy hill to the eastbound lane. I remained silent, constantly watching the rear of the semi, as the driver kept fighting for traction, still slowly inching toward us. My wife sensed my fear and did all she could to entertain our son by reading books. Finally, after I believe 3+ hours, traffic ahead started moving. The semi in front again tried to move forward and this time slipped even further. Edging back, wheels spinning, they caught pavement and were able to drive forward. With relief, we were moving and immediately stopped at a truck stop 30 minutes later. I parked and released tears of stress, fear, and joy. We stayed at the truck stop for several hours, eating and decompressing. I have always wanted to thank that truck driver. I truly feel that person saved my family's life that day. May 20th, 2013. One of the largest tornadoes to hit Oklahoma City. I was about 20. A Category EF5. It ended up destroying a vast part of Murr, Oklahoma, a suburb of OKC. Cell towers went out. People were unable to call one another. I raced back to my parents' house with a dog I was dog-sitting for. Hail and rain hitting my car as I drove across the highway to avoid the tornado. Thankfully, my family and I were fine, but about 24 people died. I never saw my father so relieved when he saw me. Tornadoes are no joke. People had about 8 minutes of notification before the tornado touched down. If you were involved with a tornado, please put shoes on and seek small compact rooms like a closet or bathroom with no windows. Was 11 swimming alone while my grandma cleaned a family member's house. They had a big in-ground pool and I found some flippers. I put them on thinking this will be fun, jumped in the deep end, and realized they were filling with water since they were several sizes too big. They essentially pulled me to the bottom of the 8-foot deep pool. I remember panicking and trying to take them off. It felt like the last few moments I was able to remove them, kick off the bottom of the pool in service. One morning, when I was 13 years old, I was walking to the bus stop. A car was going very slow through my neighborhood, so it caught my attention. It passed me, stopped, and did a U-turn. Tornado sirens went off in my head, so I dived through the bushes next to me and cut across a bunch of lawns. When I looked back, the definition of the word creep had gotten out of his car and was standing where I had been. Looking into the bushes, I spotted a neighbor I didn't know washing his car, so I got somewhat close to him and just watched the creep. Eventually he gave up and drove away. I ran back home shaking and crying, but my mom sent me to school anyway, figuring I'd be safer there than home alone. I'm a competitive cyclist, and one day while I was out riding, my tire exploded and I fell into the path of a semi. They managed to stop enough that they didn't run me over, but they still hit me and launched me about 40 feet. I spent almost a month in the hospital, and I'm back on the bike, but I'm still recovering. During the time where I couldn't ride, my mental health got so much worse than it usually is, and I tried to kill myself multiple times. Now every time I get that weightless feeling, or get road rash, I have panic attacks and can't think straight for like an hour. I'm talking mainly about how it was for me, but I know it was so much harder for my best friend than it was for me.